Okay, so I'm recording this because I want to go through the book of Psalms with you, looking at every place that they mention heart. And we're going to use the Septuagint because, as you know from our website, that's the only reliable version of the Old Testament. It's the oldest. It was long before the conflict between Christians and Jews were even possible because it was 200 plus years before Christ. Whereas the Masoretic text, which is what all of your modern translations are based on, was created by the Jewish school who crucified Jesus. No joke. And they are the ones who wanted to alter the Old Testament, the written Old Testament, to bring it in line with the oral traditions of men and what they thought it should say and what they thought it should mean. And so they changed the Old Testament. In some places, completely. It doesn't even remotely look like it does in the Septuagint, which is a translation that the Jews themselves made 200 plus years before Christ into Greek. So that's the oldest, most complete copy of the Old Testament that we have, the Septuagint. And it was used by the church for a long time. Now, by the 10th century AD, 900 years after Christ, the Jews finally finished their version of the Old Testament. And that's what the Protestants took and based their translations on. All of their translations are based on the Jewish fabrication of the Old Testament. So we don't condone that. We don't recommend the Old Testament in any of the modern English translations from the King James on. We don't recommend any of that. Avoid the Old Testament in those books if you can. Use Brenton's translation of the Septuagint. It was made in the 19th century, and there are different editions of it. Okay, so you can find it. Sometimes it's just the English, sometimes it's English and the Greek side by side. Sometimes it's just the Greek, but that won't help you. So here we go. We're going to go through the Septuagint, and we're going to hit the occurrences of the word heart. And the first one is in. Now understand that the Psalms are numbered differently in different places. Sometimes they're off by one between the Septuagint and the Masoretic text. And so your versions, it may be like either one less or one greater. If it's Psalm 40, maybe it's 41 or 39. So you got to keep that in mind. And sometimes it's neither because the Masoretic text completely changed what was there. So here we are in the fourth Psalm, or the fourth chapter of Psalms. And it says, O ye sons of men, how long will ye be slow of heart? Wherefore do ye love vanity and seek falsehood? Pause. This is written in there because it's a song. And so there are sometimes these indications in the song of what to do. But listen to what's being said. O ye sons of men, how long will ye be slow of heart? How long will you be slow of heart? So this word slow of heart really does mean slow-hearted. And it says, wherefore do you love vanity? And this word vanity means uselessness, like morally useless. Wherefore do you love moral uselessness and seek falsehood? Let's look at the next entry. That's verse 3, by the way, chapter 4, Psalm 4:3. And then it says in 4:5, be ye angry and sin not. Feel compunction upon your beds for what ye say in your hearts. The things that you say inside you that are the emotions, that create the emotions inside you. Because emotions don't just appear. Emotions are things that you create by what you say inside your heart to yourself. That's what it's saying. And it says, be ye angry and sin not. So if you are angry, then you need to be angry in such a way that you don't sin. And you must feel compunction. It's a command. Feel compunction upon your beds. You say, what is compunction? Compunction is like a very sharp pang of conscience, this indicator in your conscience that causes this kind of suffering. over something. Compunction is that immediate feeling of that. And it says feel. So this is about emotions. But you're commanded to feel it, which tells us that the Bible believes, and God testifies, that emotions are not something that happen to you. Emotions are something that you create as an inner turmoil or inner peace inside of you, from the voice inside and what you do with your voice inside your heart. Let's read it again. Be ye angry and sin not. Feel compunction upon your beds for what ye say in your hearts. Let's keep going. The next one, that was verse 5 of the same chapter 4, Psalm 4:5. Psalm 4:8. Thou hast put gladness into my heart. They have been satisfied with the fruit of their corn and wine and oil. I will both lie down in peace and sleep, for thou, Lord, only hast caused me to dwell securely. He is recognizing that if he has security, where he's able to dwell safely in peace, it is only because of the Lord. He says only, for thou, Lord, only hast caused me to dwell securely. Only God is able to create security for you to dwell in. So, let's go to the next one. In Psalm 5, verse 10, for there is no truth in their mouth. Their heart is vain. And let me check this word again. Morally useless. For there is no truth in their mouth. So it ties truth and falsehood to moral usefulness again, as it did before. For there is no truth in their mouth. Their heart is morally useless. Their heart is morally useless. They do not feel the need to be moral. They do not feel the need to fight immorality and uselessness. They are useless in regards to morality. Their throat is an open sepulcher, like where you put dead bodies. With their tongues, they have used deceit. Not only in their hearts is there no truth, but they've also, out of that, used their tongue for deceit. All right, next one. You can learn a lot about the processes that go on inside the soul by reading like this. And if you saturate yourself in the book of Psalms, you know more about the soul than you could in any other book. And you know how it works if you carefully look and keep in mind all these things as you're reading. Here it is in chapter 7, verse 10. O let the wickedness of sinners come to an end, and then thou shalt direct the righteous, O God, that searchest the hearts and reins. The word reins is kidneys, or the fortitude down here. This is the strength of the mind. This is, in the Bible, it's the bottom of the mind, but the strength of it, the fortitude. So when you're exercising the fortitude of the mind, this is where you're exercising it. Not up here, down here. And so it says, O God, thou that searchest the hearts and the kidneys, the place where the fortitude of the mind is. You search the heart, where those emotions are created, and that inner voice is, and also the kidneys that are the intention and the power that drive the will into action. So the kidneys and the liver are related in the power of the will into the action of the life. This is what the ancients believed, both the Greeks and the Hebrews. Let's keep going. And you'll find it as you read through the scriptures and you keep it in mind. This word literally is kidneys. Let's keep going. Nephros. All right, so the next one is the next verse. My help is righteous. My help is righteous. The one helping me is righteous. That's what it's saying. My help is righteous. The one helping me is righteous. My help is righteous, coming from God who saves the upright in heart. The upright in heart. Remember, that's where the inner voice is. That's where the emotions are created by that inner voice. The one who is upright in heart, who controls that inner voice, so that inner voice creates the right emotions towards God and towards evil, the correct emotions. That inner voice keeps us upright in our heart. Let's keep going. Chapter 9, verse 2. I will give thanks to thee, O Lord, with my whole heart. Remember, the heart is the inner voice, right? That creates the emotions. And so it says, I will give thanks to thee, O Lord, with my whole inner voice and the emotions that are created from that. Let's keep going. I will recount all thy wonderful works. So he tells how. How does he do that? Not by fabricating some imaginary state of holiness that you haven't achieved. That's what modern Christian music does. Watch the last video that we made that exposes that. In a Hillsong, we use a Hillsong Inside Out as an example to expose that, where they fabricate this imaginary world and imaginary state in their mind about themselves that elevates themselves in such a way that they haven't achieved, and they even admit it in the song. That's not what is going on here. When it says, I will give thanks to thee, O Lord, with my whole heart, my whole inner voice and the emotions that are created by it, it says how? By recounting all of God's wonderful works. By recounting one by one by one. And as you recount those stay in your mind. Those are being spoken inside your heart to yourself, creating emotions towards God and towards everything else. Let's go to the next one. Psalm 10, verse 3. Because the sinner praises himself for the desires of his heart, and the unjust one blesses himself. What did I just say? And what did we just expose in the Hillsong video? Exactly this. Psalm 10, verse 3. Because the sinner praises himself for the desires of his heart, and the unjust one blesses himself. Let's read the two verses before. Starting from Psalm 10:1. Why standest thou afar off, O Lord? Why, Lord, why are you standing far off? Why dost thou overlook us in times of need and affliction? Why are you passing by us when we are in need and affliction? Why? It's a fair question. Verse 2. While the ungodly one acts proudly, the poor is hotly pursued. The wicked are taken in the crafty counsels which they imagine. Imagination is a key theme in Psalms. You need to pay attention to it because it can be used for grave wickedness. And here it says, while the ungodly one acts proudly, the poor is hotly pursued. The wicked are taken in the crafty counsels which they imagine. So the wicked are caught up in their imagination that counsels them what to do. And it's crafty counsels. They're imagining all these crafty ways in order to do wickedness, and especially to the poor. The poor is hotly pursued, it says. And that's in the middle of saying, while the ungodly one acts proudly, and then it says the wicked are taken in the crafty counsels which they imagine. In between that is the poor is hotly pursued. Then it says, verse 3, the one we read, because the sinner praises himself in the desires of his heart. Now notice that was imagination. And this is saying heart. Yeah? The voice is part of the imagination. The voice of the heart is part of the imagination. That we create that voice in our heart. We speak inside of ourselves to ourselves. From the time I was a little boy, I had this voice where I would speak inside my head to myself, especially when I was reading. It helped me to read more accurately. Now, I could read faster and make a lot of mistakes. But if I read it when I'm reading it, I'm speaking it inside myself. I'd say my head back then, but it's really in the heart. When you speak it inside of yourself, out loud inside of yourself, not literally out loud here, but inside, then there's ability to be more cautious, right? Okay, and that's how I functioned with that voice. That voice was very important to me. with the ability to read accurately. I had a speech impediment when I was a little boy, so that helped me a lot with my speech. And eventually, my careers have all been centered around speaking. So let's keep going here. Because the sinner praises himself for the desires of his heart, and the desires of the heart are created by your own voice. And so he's praising himself for what he creates with his own voice. Yeah, you can see the problem. And the unjust one blesses himself. You're blessing yourself. What does that matter? That doesn't matter. That's emptiness. And the next verse we'll read. The sinner has provoked the Lord. According to the abundance of his pride, he will not seek after him. Notice how I say, may the Lord bless you as you seek him with all your heart. As you take that inner voice and seek God with your inner voice, how you speak inside yourself. As you seek God using this tool, may God bless you. May the Lord bless you as you seek him with all your heart, not holding back anything. The sinner has provoked the Lord according to the abundance of his pride. He will not seek after him. He's too prideful. And when I find myself in the middle of the day where I haven't been speaking with the Lord and listening to the Lord for about an hour or two, that's a long time for me. And then I find that I was caught up in whatever I was doing and just focusing on that and focusing on my actual actions of it and just ignoring the Lord. And it can't be like that. It can't be like that. God is not before him. God is not like in front of him. He's not. He's not mindful of God. He's not paying attention to God. God is not before him. Okay, let's go to the next entry for heart. It's in the same psalm. So that means I'll go ahead and keep reading because it's 2 verses later. Verse 5, his ways are profane at all times. Have you ever caught yourself swearing? I mean, like, you're shocked that you've sworn. You said some bad word. Or you've said something bad about someone, even not using profane words. And yet what you've said is profane. Well, this one, it says, his ways are profane at all times. And profane doesn't have to use profane words. It says his ways are profane. His paths are profane at all times. Thy judgments are removed from before him. He forgets your judgments. Lord, he forgets your judgments. They're not before him. He's not keeping them in his mind, in front of him, in his heart, as he goes. Thy judgments are removed from before him. He will gain the mastery over all his enemies. That's what it says. He will gain the mastery over all his enemies. For he has said in his heart, there's the voice in the heart, he has said in his heart, I shall not be moved, continuing without evil from generation to generation. Now that's confusing, isn't it? Okay? So, whose mouth is full of cursing and bitterness and fraud, under his tongue are trouble and pain. And sometimes the word without in older English means like outside, on the outside instead of the inside. And it's been talking about the voice and the heart, so probably without here means on the outside, evil from generation to generation. Continuing outside, continuing without evil. So it might not be like lacking evil, but continuing in this way. Let me have a look. Okay, so this word continuing is not accurate. It's like providing, like a wife does for a husband. And it says not providing from generation to generation without evil, meaning that he's providing evil all the time. So it's this double negative that's not conveyed very well in the English. Okay? So it says, I shall not be moved. Well, it doesn't really say that in the Greek. So, yeah, continuing without, yeah, see, that's a poor translation right there, but that's all right. I caught it. So, he said this in his heart. So this indicates, again, the heart, the voice in the heart. And then verse 7 says, whose mouth is full of cursing and bitterness and fraud, under his tongue are trouble and pain. Let's go to the next entry of heart. A few verses later, verse 11. For he has said in his heart, there it is again. And you'll find this repeatedly in Scripture. There is the voice of the heart, and it creates the emotions, and it creates the content of the tongue. And Jesus said so. For out of the overflow of the heart, the mouth speaks. Remember this? For he has said in his heart, God has forgotten. He has turned away his face so as never to look. Arise, O Lord, let thy hand be lifted up. Forget not the poor. Let's look at the next entry for heart. It's the next verse. Wherefore has the wicked provoked God? For he has said in his heart, he will not require it. Christian, you who consider yourself a Christian, you who have made a promise before the living God, and you say, God will not require it. God will have mercy. God will forgive me. God will overlook it. God's face is not here. And even if it were, it would shine upon me because I'm a child of God. God will not require it. But that's what the wicked say. Wherefore has the wicked provoked God? You provoke God when you promise before God that you're going to do something. You promise before God you're going to do something. You promise before God, and then you try to change that. You try to move the border stones, the boundary stones. Oh, it's not here. Let's move it this way. God sees it. God sees it, and he knows it. That you've moved the boundary stones, and he knows where it belongs, and he's going to require it. He's going to hold you accountable to it. And should you not fulfill your obligation and die, God will still hold you accountable for it. You must fulfill your obligations to God. You do not want to jeopardize your eternal salvation because you made a promise before God clearly and voluntarily and did not fulfill it. Yes, this says right here that the wicked provoke God, saying in his heart that God will not require it. Thou seest it. The psalmist says this to God. Thou seest it. You see it. For thou dost observe trouble and wrath to deliver them into thy hands. The poor has been left to thee. Thou wast a helper to the orphan. Break thou the arm of the sinner and wicked man. His sin shall be sought for and shall not be found. The Lord shall reign forever, even forever and ever. Ye Gentiles shall perish out of his land. The Lord has heard the desire of the poor. Thine ear has inclined to the preparation of their heart. The preparation of their heart. Right there's the next verse about heart. God's ear has inclined to listen closely to the preparation of their heart. Do you prepare your heart? How are you going to do that without using the voice of your heart? What you say in your heart and the emotions that are created by that. And then what pours out of your mouth. For out of the overflow of the heart, the mouth speaks. The Lord has heard the desire of the poor. Thine ear has inclined to the preparation of their heart to plead for the orphan and afflicted, that man may no more boast upon the earth. Where's the next entry for heart? The next chapter. Verse 4, chapter 11. For behold, the sinners have bent their bow. They have prepared their arrows for the quiver to shoot, for privily at the upright in heart. Those of you who are upright in heart, the sinners, will prepare their bows and their arrows and will aim it and will plan on shooting you. Next one, chapter 12, verse 3. Everyone has spoken vainly to his neighbor. Their lips are deceitful. They have spoken with a double heart. Wow, a double heart. Let me make sure of that word. Yeah, they've spoken doubly in their heart, like two-faced. Wow. Careful what you do with your heart. The alcoholic can tell someone something and believe it completely, even if it's a lie, and then turn around and tell someone another lie and completely believe it, even though it's opposed to this one. That's in the heart. He's convinced himself in his heart. It's that voice, the inner voice that he's using to deceive himself. Don't be like the drunkard, who's a double liar. Chapter 13, verse 3, how long shall I take counsel in my soul, having sorrows in my heart daily? How long shall my enemy be exalted over me? Look on me, hearken to me, O Lord my God. Lighten my eyes, lest I sleep in death. Lest at any time mine enemy say, I have prevailed against him. My persecutors will exult if ever I should be moved. But I have hoped in thy mercy. My heart shall exult in thy salvation. My heart shall, will, future, exult in thy salvation. I will sing to the Lord who has dealt bountifully with me, and I will sing psalms to the name of the Lord Most High. I will sing songs about what he did when he does it. It's not about imagining something that's not there and singing it. It's not about deception. It's not about fraud, like modern contemporary Christian music continually superimposes fraud on you. Leads your heart into fraudulent statements and emotions. Stop listening to it. Next entry is the same chapter 13, verse 6. But I have hoped in thy mercy, my heart shall exult in thy salvation. We read that. The next chapter, 14. Every chapter since what? Chapter 4? 10 chapters now. The fool has said in his heart, there's the voice in the heart again. The fool has said in his heart, let's see, the one who has no mind, no thought. I think that, let me check. This is our word. The one without fortitude of mind. The one without fortitude of mind. The fool. Fool means one without fortitude of mind. He doesn't exercise the strength of the mind that's in the kidneys. The fool has said in his heart. The one without fortitude of mind has said in his heart, there's no God. He cannot or will not exercise the fortitude of his mind, and out of that lack of fortitude, he has said in his heart with his voice, there's no God. They have corrupted themselves and become abominable in their devices. There is none that does goodness. There is not even so much as one. That's the quote that the Protestants love to quote to say that everyone's a sinner. And everyone's always a sinner. And everyone is always a sinner and cannot stop sinning. That's not what it says here. It says that those who do not exercise the fortitude of the mind are that way. They're abominable in their devices. None of them does goodness. Not even one. You cannot do goodness without the fortitude of the mind. Because from the fortitude of the mind, you control the voice in the heart. That's what it's saying. The one lacking fortitude in the mind has said in his heart, there's no God. How can he do that? Because he lacks that control over his mind. This from here. Let's keep going. chapter 15, verse 3. He that walks blameless and works righteousness, who speaks truth in his heart. So let's read this. O Lord, who shall sojourn in thy tabernacle, and who shall dwell in thy holy mountain? The Apocalypse of Peter, which I've read from, you'll find it on the site if you just type in Peter. It'll be among one of the videos. And the Apocalypse of Peter, which I've read from, I read from the punishments in hell. But there's also a chapter that survived of that, where the saints come out of the holy mountain. So it says, who shall dwell in thy holy mountain? He that walks blameless and works righteousness, who speaks truth in his heart. That's the voice of the heart again. You will not dwell in God's holy mountain unless the voice in your heart speaks truth. Unless that voice in your heart speaks truth, you will not dwell with God. Who has not spoken crafty with his tongue? Neither has done evil to his neighbor, nor taken up a reproach against them that dwells near him. Not just the neighbor like next door, but those in the vicinity of him. In his sight, an evil worker is set at naught, but he honors them that fear the Lord. If you do not fear God, you become an evil worker. That's what it means. He swears to his neighbor and disappoints him not. So the one who is fearing God, if you swear to your neighbor, you will not disappoint him. You will do what you said. Again, that's where we started, remember? That God will require it. Not like the useless evil that comes into you that says God won't require it. And the last verse of chapter 15, he has not lent his money on usury and has not received bribes against the innocent. He that does these things shall never be moved. If you do these things, if you lend money and not require usury, that's interest on interest, right? And has not received bribes against the innocent, and all these other things that have been mentioned here, you shall not be moved. Chapter 16, verse 10. Therefore my heart rejoiced and my tongue exulted. Moreover, also my flesh shall rest in hope. My flesh shall rest in hope, because thou wilt not leave my soul in hell. Neither wilt thou suffer thine Holy One to see corruption. Thou hast made known to me the ways of life. You have made known to me the ways of life. Praise you, Father. You will fill me with joy. You will fill me with joy. It's not imagination. You don't go to church and then imagine it and then say, oh, God did it. No, this says he really will, that he really does it. But if you imagine it and it's done that way, that's not God. That's not the same kind of joy. Thou wilt fill me with joy, with thy countenance. And remember, God's countenance only looks upon those who are righteous, who are upright, who are pure in heart, not those who contrive evil. If you think that you can't help but sin as long as you're in the body, God's countenance is not upon you for good. And therefore, any joy you might think you feel is not from God. It says so right here. Thou wilt fill me with joy with thy countenance. At thy right hand there are delights forever. There are delights forever. If you want to experience delight, you must be at the right hand of God. We'll stop there for this video, and we'll pick this up in a second one. May the Lord bless you as you seek him with all your heart.